Korea a global threat during his visit to South Korea. He says the United States will do all we can to defend ourselves and our allies, but that it makes sense for North Korea to start talking and make a deal. This is Outnumbered. I'm Sandra Smith, and here today, Harris Faulkner, Republican strategist and Fox News contributor Lisa Booth, Democratic strategist and Fox News contributor Jessica Tarlov is here, and today's hashtag One Lucky Guy. Former Utah Congressman and Fox News contributor Jason Chaffetz is here, and he is outnumbered with all due respect.
If you could have heard the discussion before we started,
it was all hair products.
We just wanted to remind you that you're outnumbered. So.
Now they're all going to wonder what we were talking about.
Hair products.
LA looks. I put it in and I'm done.
He says he uses gel number 11.
Did I mention it's a busy news day?
Yes.
You did.
All right, let's begin. President Trump hinting at a surprise announcement as he prepares to deliver a speech to South Korea's assembly tonight. He made the comments during a toast at a state dinner held in his honor in Seoul. At a joint news conference earlier, President Trump spoke about the threat from North Korea.
North Korea is a worldwide threat that requires worldwide action. The United States stands prepared to defend itself and its allies using the full range of our unmatched military capabilities. With that being said, I really believe that it makes sense for North Korea to come to the table and to make a deal.
The next stop on the president's tour is Beijing. He mentioned China in his remarks and appeared to send a message to Vladimir Putin.
I want to just say that President Xi, where we will be tomorrow, China, has been very helpful. We'll find out how helpful soon, but he really has been very, very helpful. So China's out trying very hard to solve the problem with North Korea. We hope that Russia, likewise, will be helpful.
I'll let you take it away there. I mean, what message is the president sending as you continue to see him on this very lengthy 11-day trip in Asia?
I was just a little kid when Ronald Reagan was president, but if you look through history, he projected peace through strength. And I see Donald Trump doing the same thing. We have 3 carrier groups, unprecedented in the region, the 7th Fleet there in support. We're flexing the muscle of the United States of America. At the same time, you see President Trump reaching out, saying he's willing to talk to Kim Jong-un, which is a huge sea change. I mean, it really is a step forward. At the same time, he's praising the Chinese lightly and encouraging the Russians to also come to the table. So we've shown our bonds with the Japanese. Prime Minister Abe and the president have a very good relationship. And then as you saw President Trump there with President Moon, the newly elected president from South Korea, you've got the unification between what's happening in Japan, South Korea, and the United States, projecting strength, but then also reaching out to China, Russia, and
a former senior advisor to the Trump administration says Trump is showing the world the U.S. and its allies won't be Asia's chump anymore. And I want to show you this quote from Christian Whiten. He writes, as President Trump makes his first official trip to East Asia, one crucial development is clear to those who look closely. America and its allies are through being chumps. Trump will continue to build out his restoration of America's traditional foreign policy, which forcefully advocates our key security and economic interests. He has also restored our key alliances with countries that matter the most. Do you see it that way, Lisa Booth?
I do. I think it's important to note that the Pentagon had recently said that basically the only way, from a military standpoint, we're going to destroy North Korea's nuclear arsenal is essentially from a full-on ground invasion, right? So I think the Trump administration recognizes that. And so what we've seen from the administration is essentially trying to do everything he can possibly do from an economic and diplomatic standpoint to try to put pressure on North Korea. We've seen that on, very harsh sanctions at the UN, forcing and encouraging China and Russia to sign on to those sanctions. And we have seen some action from China as well. There's a report today that basically saying that China has told their tourism to try to, basically shut down or to scale back their tourism, which is a key source of income for North Korea. We've seen them suspend coal imports. We've also seen the central bank tell other banks to not do business with North Korea. So we have seen some action.
But there are some who are challenging that is China really being helpful. But if indeed it is, that is a major change from what we have seen in recent years.
Oh, it would be incredibly exciting if China was being forthright about this. And I haven't seen anything thus far on the trip to Asia, which obviously has been, I don't want to say hampered, but the course has been changed by the horrible tragedy in Texas, which the president has obviously had to turn a lot of his attention to at this time. I object to the idea of using the word chumps, because that's just a dig at the Obama administration. But I loved hearing the president say, we're going to have talks, we're going with diplomacy, because just a month ago, it didn't look like he had any interest when he was saying on Twitter to Rex Tillerson, cool it, it's not going to work. And it seemed like he really wanted to go full throttle, the military option. This seems to be striking a good balance here.
But that's how you get people to the table, is you talk their language. That's what peace
We have
through
no
strength is all
evidence
about.
what Kim Jong-un is going to be doing here. I can only comment on a change in the way that the president is presenting, and I'm saying something nice. So how could this be a problem?
No, but what I will say, but I found this. There was a Fordham international law professor from Fordham University, Thomas Lee, who made this remark that I thought was really interesting. And basically, what he said about one of the key differences in the Trump administration is some of the rhetoric that he's used, because basically he believes that North Korea actually doesn't really know what the Trump administration will do, and that has given him leverage. So I think in some respect, the rhetoric that he has used in convincing North Korea and also China and Russia that he may actually act is important.
And also the tone, right, Harris?
Yeah, the rhetoric and the tone, I think, are important. Probably the most important thing is the consistency of them. So when you talk about Twitter, remember that is a domain that the president is very comfortable in, and he can, go however many directions that he wants to go. But when you listen and you watch him, it seems like there is a consistency. You certainly saw that with Moon as they sat down with troops from both sides, South Korean and American troops. I don't know if you caught that. It was in the middle of the night. I think Sandra and I were the only ones up. She was walking her dog and I was doing something else, watching TV or whatever. Couldn't sleep. But, if you were watching those moments, the president really did set the tone of, this is our military, I support them, I'm going to break bread with them, which is such a visual an optic of power, right? So, but the other thing I noticed, you talk about talking the same language. This president has street credibility when it comes to the economy. And I don't just mean his past as a corporate builder, and we can talk about what businesses worked and what didn't, but also just where the economy is right now. So you've got to think that those leaders who are across the world are also paying attention to that. Can this person who's visiting help me make my local economy look like that? Because that's not a bad thing.
Well, they also all know they have to make bilateral trade deals with him, because he said that he wants to go one-on-one. And
they'll talk trade. A strong Dow in rarefied air territory, a situation with the GDP that's grown more than it has in a decade. Those are the sorts of things that he's walking with, as kind of his drafting wind right now.
I was there in the region in South Korea and in Japan back in May, and the leaders, need the safety and support and the safety blanket, if you will, of the United States, because they cannot defend themselves without the military might that we are able to project. But they also are some of our most important trading partners. And when we walked away from the TPP, I think the president made the right decision.
He was not down with TPP.
But we have to have the one-on-one deals with both South Korea and with the Japanese, and the president has put an America First agenda out there, and I think America loves it, and it brings people to the table, and I do think we can work something out so we have even better trade with Japan and South Korea.
That's a part of the story, I think, that's not getting talked about. We're so focused on the military, but we know that the economy is everybody's driver.
Well, that's already come up on the trip. The president's going to use that to his advantage anytime that he can. But you just wonder, when the president comes home from this, so like his first foreign trip abroad, it was seen as a huge success, and he came home and things just changed so quickly. So does this carry through? Could you say that this is bringing the president some momentum in his...
Well, it is. Look, some of the goods like beef are now actually being sold in that region, or they weren't being sold before. We are making progress. The auto industry has a very vested interest into what's going on there. And I do think it carries through. We have so many ties with Japan and South Korea, and that threat in North Korea is not going away.
All right, we'll leave it there. The man credited with helping to stop the mass shooting at a Texas church is speaking out.
I'm no hero. My Lord protected me and gave me the skills to do what needed to be done.
President Trump saying more gun laws may have stopped that Texas hero from actually saving lives that morning. Plus, new scrutiny for former FBI Director James Comey over his exoneration of Hillary Clinton in her email scandal. A top lawmaker wants answers over changing language in the drafts of the statement clearing her.
Our judgment is that no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case.
Fox News alert now. New scrutiny on former FBI Director James Comey's decision to exonerate Hillary Clinton over her private email server. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley says he's obtained a memo drafted by Mr. Comey in the weeks before the FBI investigation was complete. The senator says that memo shows someone removed the phrase grossly negligent and replaced it with extremely careless. Gross negligence? That can be a crime. Carelessness, not so much. Then Comey used that exact language when he eventually let Clinton off the hook. Remember? Okay. Well, he did. We remember it. And if we can bring you that tape later, we will. Here's Fox News senior judicial analyst Andrew Napolitano on these new revelations.
This is the rare federal statute that doesn't require the government to prove intent. This statute, the government can get a conviction if you are grossly negligent. What is the difference between grossly negligent and extremely careless? Nothing. They mean the same thing. James Comey thought he could pull a fast one on the American people by using a slightly less offensive sounding term, extremely careless, and thereby exonerate her. But legally, it's the same thing.
Now we want you to hear it in James Comey's voice and words as it was. Let's watch.
There is evidence that they were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information. Our judgment is that no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case.
Man, I just look at you, Congressman, and I have to think, how frustrating is it to see what looks like a softening of the words beyond a reasonable doubt, I guess is the base.
This whole thing just stinks. The whole idea that the FBI director, weeks before they've interviewed what ended up being 16 or 17 other witnesses, that he was actually drafting this thing, changing the words, moving away from gross negligence, which is actually in the statute, and then claiming that they couldn't prove intent when, as Judge Napolitano pointed out, the statute doesn't require you to prove intent. You just have to be grossly negligent in what you're doing. But to be even drafting, can you imagine if a judge was drafting the how he was going to rule before he heard 16 people who had come up to the witness stand? That person would be disbarred. They'd be fired. They'd probably be, just kicked out. We would probably have hearings.
Only if it got out.
But this did get out. And that's why Chairman Grassley and Senator Graham are doing a great service. And this is why you do oversight. This is why the legislative branch oversees the executive branch, because it should be unified on both sides of the aisle. But this is an FBI director gone wild. And he did not do what he was supposed to do. The very fact that he was drafting it ahead of time is just so wrong.
I have a question for you, Jessica. And, I don't know that we can turn back time and use our crystal ball, but there may be some evidence to this just based on how former President Barack Obama behaved. Do you think had he known that this was going on, that he would have weighed in on this and we would have seen a correction of course?
If President Obama had known that
he was backing Hillary Clinton, and
I don't think that President Obama would have tampered in what was going on with the FBI. I think that he has the utmost respect for the FBI. I mean, this is the constitutional law professor.
Do you think he knew something on that Sunday night with 60 Minutes when he said that there was no way that she would ever be guilty of anything?
I don't think that. And I've also read analyses that show that drafting earlier memos is quite common. You can read this all over the place. Now, there are 3 people who could have changed that, according to what I've read. That's not just James Comey. There are 2 other people. And I personally have no problem with Chuck Grassley and Senator Graham looking further into this. What I have a problem with is this total tilt as if Hillary Clinton is the only person who did anything wrong and we're ignoring Bob Mueller. What do we have, 9 people who had communications with Russians?
Well, we're not, but there's a billion different investigations, including a special that is being heavily litigated.
Care about Hillary.
Do you honestly think that is not being litigated enough in Congress or in the media? That is literally all the mainstream media talks talks about.
No.
I think the bigger problem here and the concern for a lot of Americans is the fact that you do have statements from President Obama basically saying that she didn't put our national security at risk. We also know that the Obama administration was keeping tabs on the incoming Trump administration as well. They've spied on journalists. They've spied on Dianne Feinstein. So, I mean, I think the idea that somehow this is outside of something that the Obama administration would do, or even James Comey,
You
for
think
that matter.
President Obama did this?
I don't know.
You
I think that it's
he knew and
important
he
to
changed
get.
it.
I don't know,
just
Jessica. I
said
think it's
I'm fine
important
with
to get
it.
to the bottom of it.
Hold
but
on,
then you
but
also
let's deal
have
with
the
what
fact.
we know, and we know that the language was changed from what he wrote to what he said that day, which Harris just showed us. Grossly negligent to extremely careless. Judge Napolitano says there's actually no legal difference in that language. Both are punishable as crimes with the result of prison time. So can they move forward with what they know and what they have today?
Remember, there is not just Hillary Clinton. There were up to 300 people that were dealing in classified information in a non-secure setting. And the fundamental problem is the State Department still has an open investigation and they haven't closed that.
I get it. We're talking about it. We don't know what's going to happen with it. Judge says when asked, is it too late to impanel a grand jury? He said, no, that can still happen. Does it go there?
Look, there's new evidence. And of course, I do think there should be a special prosecutor to go in and look at this. Michael Horowitz, who's the Inspector General, you never hear a leak out of them. They have 450 employees at the Department of Justice working for the Inspector General, and they are looking at that. But I do think a special prosecutor is warranted in this, not just for Hillary Clinton, but all the other garbage that's happened along with this.
A real quick last
Well,
one.
I was going to say, and you layer in the tarmac meeting with Loretta Lynch, Bill Clinton as well, the fact that James Comey took her instruction to call it a matter instead of an investigation. There's just a lot of questions
Well, what
we still
about
don't have
President
answers
Trump
to.
applying pressure to Jim Comey that he wanted him to drop the Russia stuff?
Because Comey had told him multiple times that he wasn't under investigation, yet he wouldn't tell the public that.
Emphasis on quick, sorry. Well, it's not your run-of-the-mill governor's race, that's for sure. Why today's election in Virginia could mean a lot for President Trump and the Democrats if they lose that. And a top Democrat and a pal of the Clintons firing back at Donna Brazil's tell-all book. Brazil says Hillary Clinton had the Democratic primaries tilted in her favor. How big a distraction is this as Democrats look to win in today's races? Stay with us.
Nobody cares.
On this week.
Nobody cares
listen.
about what Donna Brazil has said in a book.
Governor, one second.
Nobody.
Fox News alert, a high-stakes election that could be an early referendum on President Trump and Democrats' fortunes in 2018. Voters heading to the polls in Virginia, where polls show Democrat Ralph Northam neck and neck with Republican Ed Gillespie. Increasingly purple Virginia has voted Democrat the last 3 presidential elections, and today's outcome could also shape how candidates campaign in next year's midterms. President Trump tweeting this. Ralph Northam will allow crime to be rampant in Virginia. He's weak on crime, weak on our great vets, anti-Second Amendment, and has been horrible on Virginia economy. Vote Ed Gillespie today. Ed Gillespie will totally turn around the high crime and poor economic performance of Virginia. MS-13 and crime will be gone. Vote today, ASAP. And while Gillespie has been embracing Trump's key issues, he's been keeping some distance from the president. Today, an exception.
I'll be able to work with the president and the vice president and the cabinet to get those things done. Appreciate his support very much, and I know it'll help me be an effective governor for us as I seek to serve the people of the Commonwealth.
All right, Congressman, what's at stake in this race?
Oh, it's a fascinating race. And just the fact that the Democrats, I mean, this is a state where Donald Trump lost by about 6 percentage points. It's neck and neck. I hope that Gillespie wins. He's a
and Northam's been leading.
He's a good, decent, honest guy. I really like him. I've been able to spend some time with him through the years. And he has a real shot at pulling this out, depending on who shows up in the next few hours.
The polling leading up to this day, Jessica, has been the economy and health care are the most important thing to voters in the state of Virginia.
As it is consistently. I mean, we do get caught up in a lot of these sidebar issues or kind of, I forget, what are we supposed to call it, like identity politics issues. But at the end of the day, people want money in their pockets and they want great health care and they want great education.
Well, let's
for their
face it,
kids.
the monuments and the statues coming down have been a big conversation during the election process. They have been as well. But I mean, Ralph Northam has also focused on, his career, his service.
He's a veteran. He's a pediatrician. I think he seems like a fantastic candidate. We have Terry McAuliffe out there for him on all cylinders and Democrats across the country. I was saying, I'm bummed out. I'm going to go vote at the end of the day. But New York, we never have exciting races like this. So if you're in Virginia, get out there and vote. You know how I would like you to vote, but you do you. And just make sure that you participate.
To that point, turnout's going to be a big...
I don't even know what that means. Like, what choices do Democrats
and I'd
have?
like to, I'm a Virginian, and I voted absentee on Saturday, so I did do my civic duty. Look, there's no reason. Ralph Northam should be up by 10 points right now. Virginia's a trending blue state. He's outspent Gillespie. I think it's almost 2-1. So there's no reason that this race should be in the margin of error, which is where it is right now. And I think the biggest problem for Democrats right now is they're very demoralized. I mean, we're going to get into this a little bit later, but the real-time civil war that's breaking out in the Democratic Party right now, you look at the fundraising numbers, and it's just been abysmal for the Democrat Party. They are not raising money. There is not energy united behind the party. So this is going to have a demoralizing effect if they lose this race, just like the Georgia 6 special election did. Also, I think Democrats keep thinking that solely running against President Trump and trying to tie Republican candidates to him is going to be enough. It wasn't enough in Georgia 6, and I think if we see this race as well, if Gillespie comes out on top, again, we're going to have another example of that it's not enough.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to point out what you said about the money, because I do think it's key. So I was kind of kidding with you. What options do they have? They have the option to stay home, and that's a lot of times where you're
I was talking to our Republican viewers. I'd like everyone participate.
That's a lot of the way that you see your money being spent, to make sure that that doesn't happen. And so when you talk about the deficit in DNC fundraising, it really starts to hit home in places where you should probably have a double-digit lead. But even without that, you should be able to put enough money on the ground so that you don't have to say
But there are other Democrat groups that are raising a lot of money. I mean, we only talk about the DNC and the RNC or the DCCC and whatever, but there are a lot of private donors as well. You have the Tom Steyers of the world who are definitely pumping, Joe Soros, who pump a lot of money into these races. So I don't feel like Democrats are necessarily at a spending deficit, but I totally agree with you that eventually, if we keep losing these, we're going to have to realign.
They are, if you look at the
All right,
party.
I'm going to jump in, guys, because we're getting an update from Sutherland Springs, Texas. The Texas Department of Public Safety is providing a briefing on the church shooting that happened there Sunday morning. Are we going to be able to listen in here?
Not yet. We're being told not yet.
Okay, so I think my IFB is not working, which is why I wanted to check in on that. We're expecting a briefing down there. Obviously, we're going to want to bring you any new details as we get them. If we're able to get back to that, we will. Otherwise, we'll continue our conversation about the Virginia race.
We'll definitely take it when it happens. Go ahead.
The fundamental problem for the Democrats, not only in Virginia, but across the country, is they don't have a message. They're out there. The Republicans are fighting to cut people's taxes. That's going to affect everybody's pocketbook. And yet they're saying, no, no, no. I mean, they're going back to their same liberal left-wing tendencies of we need more government spending, we want more of your money, we want more big government, and that is not a resonating message. It just doesn't work.
Well, there are, I mean, we've seen record signups for Obamacare, right? When everyone is slamming it, saying that it's dead in the water. People are flocking to it. Republicans have not delivered on
what are the
healthcare.
Options?
What do you mean?
There's no
what are the
choice.
Options? Because of you.
No,
Jessica, that's an interesting turn of events. Last time I checked, it was the Democrat Party that passed Obamacare on a party line.
No, but I'm saying Republicans have not been able to put up their own bill. They couldn't get it passed. So, and
it
now
did pass out of the House.
Guys, I got to break in with breaking news. We do want to go to Texas. We are getting an update right now from Sutherland Springs police and officials. Let's watch this together on the massacre that happened at the church.
We have the suspect's cell phone. We have executed a search warrant on that cell phone, and that cell phone has been turned over to the FBI for analysis. FBI special agent in charge, Chris Combs, is here, and here shortly he's going to discuss that. Another thing we're not going to discuss today is the names of the victims inside the church. We believe we have everyone properly identified, and we have notified all the next of kin. However, the medical examiner's office is confirming our findings, and they will give us permission to release those names, and we hope to have that later today or tomorrow at the latest. And the last thing that we're not prepared to discuss is the suspect and his release from the Air Force. We would refer all those questions back to the Air Force. With that, first up is going to be Special Agent in charge of ATF, Fred Malinowski, and he has an update on the firearms.
Thanks, sir. Good morning, everyone. Two updates from ATF. One is, as far as the rifle goes, the Ruger 5.56. ATF firearms expert examined that rifle yesterday. All indications are that that is not a fully automatic weapon. That is a semi-automatic weapon. We will not know 100% sure until we actually test fire it, but all indications now are it's a semi-automatic weapon. I want to clear that up because that's been reported a couple different ways in the media. The second thing is ATF agents have acquired shell casings from the scene. Those shell casings will be entered into ATF's National Integrated Ballistic Identification Network, and that will help us determine if that rifle was used in any other shootings. Thank you very much. I'll answer any questions at the end. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Christopher Combs, the FBI SAC here in San Antonio. As the commander stated, the phone of the subject was turned over to us. We flew that on a DPS plane last night to Quantico. They're in the process of looking at the phone. Unfortunately, at this point in time, we are unable to get into that phone. So it actually highlights an issue that you've all heard about before. With the advance of the technology and the phones and the encryptions, law enforcement, whether it's at the state, local, or the federal level, is increasingly not able to get into these phones. So I'm not going to describe what phone it is because I don't want to tell every bad guy out there what phone to buy to harass our efforts on trying to find justice here. I can assure you that we're working very hard to get into the phone, and that will continue until we find an answer. I don't know how long that's going to be quite honest with you. It could be tomorrow, it could be a week, could be a month. We just don't know yet. But we're going to keep working on that phone and the other digital media that we have, and we can turn that over to the Rangers. Thank you.
Obviously, this is a massive crime scene, and we have the best of the best processing this crime scene. It's a long process, and like I said, we're only 48 hours into this. The Texas Rangers and the FBI Evidence Recovery Team have worked day and night, and today the Incident Commander for the Texas Rangers, Corey Lane, is here to speak.
Good morning. Again, my name is Corey Lane. I'm Company F Commander in charge of this crime scene processing. Just want to go over a few things of resources that we have dedicated right now, mainly the workforce personnel that's processing this crime scene. We have 136 commissioned officers dedicated to the crime scene processing or support of that mission. 49 of those 136 are the best of the best Rangers that we have. They're part of our major crime scene investigative team. They don't get on that team by accident. They have to show two things, which is talent and drive to be a part of a crime scene and interest in crime scene investigation. The team leads of that investigative team have all graduated the National Forensic Academy in Tennessee, and that's on top of their 3-week basic crime scene investigation training that they receive, that every Ranger receives from the Department of Public Safety. These Rangers also continually attend advanced crime scene investigation courses to stay ahead of the curve on any updates or advances in crime scene investigation. Like the director said, we're 48 hours into this, and these men and women who are dedicated to processing such a complex and massive scene have worked tirelessly, and it's nothing short of inspiring. So that's all I've got.
Aubrey Lewis is the district attorney for the 81st Judicial District. Even though the suspect is deceased in this case, she has been out here every day working with the community and working with our victim services from all agencies, including the Department of Public Safety, and she's here to give a brief.
Good morning. We've had an outpouring from around the world of people concerned with the burdens that these families have with funeral expenses. And I want to give you a little bit of peace of mind to understand that the Attorney General's office has victim specialists along with FBI Victim Services, DPS, and our office that are working with these families one-on-one. And we have the Attorney General's office here because they have Crime Victims Compensation Fund that they are in charge of. That fund releases money for the victims' families, including funeral expenses. Those funeral expenses, the amount of funding for each victim is $6,500. We believe that that's going to be sufficient funeral costs for the victims' families, so they will not be burdened with that financial portion of their loss, and they can concentrate on trying to grieve and process what else is going on in their world at this time. In addition to that, there has been a company that has come forward and agreed to donate the caskets to all of the victims. And we are grateful for that person and their service to our community and their heart and being willing to donate that. So those people who are concerned with that initial burden that these families have, as we all are, we have a crime victims compensation fund that is in place for that purpose and is being utilized and streamlined to ensure that the victims are not burdened with that initial funeral expense. So thank you very much.
With that, I have a few questions that were submitted by the media that we will answer, and then we'll open it up to question and answers. The first one was, why was the concealed handgun license denied for the suspect? That's protected information. All I can tell you is that he did not have a concealed handgun license. When will the investigation conclude, and when will the church reopen? As far as the church reopening, that's a question for somebody else. We hope to finish up the crime scene investigation and all the forensic analysis by tomorrow night, and then that will be turned back over to the local officials. Were any other persons involved? We have no reason to believe, or no information that anybody else was involved in this crime. There's some question about the pregnant female inside the church. Again, she's one of the victims inside the church, and we're not prepared to release any information regarding the victims inside the church until we get confirmation from the medical examiner's office. There was a question regarding domestic terrorism. By definition, we have no reason to believe that this crime was politically motivated or based on religious beliefs. We have no reason to believe that. There was questions regarding the suspect's mother-in-law. She was not in the church. She does attend this church, but we know on Sunday when this crime occurred, she was not in church. Beyond that, there were some questions regarding the weapons purchase. I believe those were answered. Some questions regarding search warrants. We are executing search warrants, such as the evidentiary search warrant on the cell phone. But with that, that's all I have, and I'll open it up to y'all for questions.
I know you have to be very careful when you did tell us you cannot answer certain questions. I'd like to ask you a general question that will absolutely be able to answer. In the issue of the motive, I'm not asking you any specifics. Do investigators, however, believe they have a handle? Do they believe they know what the motive is without telling us what it is?
There's still a lot of interviews to be done. We have some indication on what the conflict was between the family. You know, what the timing and stuff like that. Still a lot of work to be done. As I said, it's only 48 hours into this.
How could someone be denied the right to still carry a weapon and still be able to purchase
That's we have databases that we check, TCIC, NCIC.
I understand that it's law, but can you explain to me the rationale between being able to?
I can't. I can tell you what is required. And there was nothing in our databases that precluded him from purchasing a firearm.
So you're denied the incident of the license.
What time, if you reconstruct it, what time did the first shot happen? How long did the incident last? How many shots?
I don't have that at this time. I can tell you when the first call came in, the Wilson County Sheriff's Office arrived within four minutes. I can tell you 4 minutes is a long time during an active shooter situation.
What time were you releasing those 911 tapes?
That'll be up to the Sheriff's Office and their 911 system.
What is the status of the ex-wife and child?
I'm sorry?
What is the status of his ex-wife, Kelly's ex-wife, and his stepchild?
I don't have that information.
Are they okay?
Yes.
Sir, the president has said that hundreds of more people would have been at risk had the citizen shooter not been there. First of all, is that your assessment, that there would have been hundreds of more potentially been killed? And secondly, that more extreme vetting would have prevented the citizen shooter from getting away?
I don't know about the vetting, but we can only speculate. We don't know what he was thinking, what was in his mind, and what his future plans were. But, you know, this is a situation where I wouldn't be willing to take that risk. And, you know, in my opinion, I said the other day that Mr. Williford, I believe he's a hero. I've seen no media since this started But somebody sent me a clip of an interview that he did with the media, and how can you not love that guy? You know, that guy did what he knew needed to be done. And but as far as his future plans and what he had planned for the rest of the day, and if there would have been more deaths, you know, it's all speculation.
Would better vetting not have prevented the gunman from getting his weapons?
I don't know.
We heard the shooter was here last Tuesday for the fall festival here. Did he have any confrontations with any of the people here?
I don't have that information. So.
Was there how many people were in the church at the time, and whether everyone was injured or killed?
I'm sorry?
Was the entire congregation either injured or killed during the shooting?
You know, we believe the congregation at this church is roughly just over 50. You know, we know how many were deceased and how many were shot. There were very few that were here that were uninjured.
Did the shooter use a bump stock?
I don't have that information.
Is it possible he used it?
I would refer that to ATF.
Did the gunman, sir? A couple things. Did he use a bump stock? Two things. 15 clips, 30 rounds in a clip. Is it possible that he shot 450 rounds every one? So he used a bump.
First part of that is the number around this part of the investigation. We will not release that. There's no evidence of a bump stock being used.
So is it possible he fired 450 rounds?
Again, part of the investigation that is not going to get released publicly.
Last night, someone said all the magazines were empty by the end of it. There's 15 times 30. It's 450 shots. Were they all empty? I'm assuming that they were all full.
What was talked about yesterday is that the magazines at the scene were empty. So I don't believe there was a number put out.
That doesn't apply to all 450 rounds of fire.
We're just not going to put that information out as part of the investigation.
Do you have any information? He supports that he was shooting from a rooftop position initially. Can somebody comment on that?
When did he begin to plan this? And do you have anything specific
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yeah. About premeditation. Do you have any specific, or do you have any evidence when he began to plan his
attack? We do not at this time. And to answer your question, we have no information that he was shooting from a rooftop. We don't have any facts to support that. We're the fact finders, and we're collecting the facts as we find them.
Can you speak a little bit about what the shooting position he had was?
He changed position. He walked, he moved. And as far as the magazines, you know, they're 30-round capacity magazines. How many rounds he actually had in those magazines, a lot of that trajectory work is being done this morning, so we can't answer that.
Do we know when those were sent? Was it this weekend? Was it a week ago? What is that timeline look like?
Again, we will know more when we're able to exploit his phone.
Was he noticing anything to anybody else? Are you executing a search warrant on his phone, his vehicle, and what else? Where the search warrant?
I can't. A lot of the vehicle's already been processed and secured. As far as his home, I believe those have already been conducted. Whether they were consensual searches or search warrants, I can't answer to that.
When the vehicle belonged to him, or
based on the interviews you've done, has there been any indication that the shooter made a targeted threat towards this church or gun violence threats towards the mother-in-law?
Again, that gets into the investigation, and we know that there was conflict. He was upset with the mother-in-law, but beyond that, I can't comment.
Did the shooter sit alone? Are you asking for tech companies to help you open it? I know that you investigate, people give tips or anything like that. Was he ever at any time on the radar for the FBI?
So I can tell you that he is not in any FBI database. We have not had any investigations on him previous to this event.
As far as the telephone, I know in San Bernardino you ended up having a super sleuth page in unlocking that phone. Are you soliciting other super sleuths that might want to help the FBI unlock?
So I can tell you at this time we're still working on it. We have partners that we work with on these things. I think it goes to complexity and how hard the problem is and how long it's going to take. But we will get into that phone.
Sir, everyone knows that an iPhone is one of the phones that is told about in this regard. Is it an iPhone?
I will not describe the type of phone because, again, I don't want to encourage bad people to buy it. I'm not going to talk about what kind of phone it is.
You and I talked about soft targets and your concern about soft targets. The sheriff of Williamson County is making a seminar available for churches to talk about security. Are we at that point?
So I've done a lot on active shooters through the years. You know, you look at the numbers are on the rise. I think everybody, no matter where you are, needs to think about this. If you're in a school, if you're in a college, if you go to the movies, we should all be thinking about what are we going to do if a crisis breaks out right here. There are a lot of programs out there. The FBI supports programs. We teach law enforcement. There's private community programs out there. But I think we all have to think very hard about this and make sure that we're prepared. Just like schools do fire drills, because we used to kill a lot of children in fires back in the early 1900s. I think we all have to take active shooters very seriously and do everything we can to prepare and prevent for that.
This is a local question
how
for the
he was
DA.
denied a license to carry and still able to purchase a gun in the state of Texas.
That's not my discipline, I'm
This is a
sorry.
local question for the DA.
Yes.
Okay. We have a San Antonio funeral home that is offered to assist with the funeral services. Does that mean, if it means that they'll cover the cost, what does that mean for the $6,500 per victim promised by your Crime Victims Compensation Fund? Would that be added on to something like that?
We're working in partnership with all of the local funeral homes to ensure that our victims are not out of pocket and are not burdened by the cost of the funerals.
So if it goes above
That is our hope, is that the funeral homes will work with the victims to make sure that it does not go above that cost. I can't promise that to them at this point, but we are working in partnership with the funeral homes. They're aware of the situation, and they don't want to re-victimize our victims as well. So,
is there any funding available for the victims, for the ones that survived but got shot in the process? Any funding available?
that same crime victims compensation is also available for the victims who are suffering injuries that have medical expenses and things like that. And so they will work with the Attorney General's office, our office, FBI, DPS to ensure that they go through the process to have that compensated as well.
Any idea when the funeral will be unborn child?
I'm sorry?
Does the deceased count include the unborn child, or is it?
It does.
Any idea when the funeral will begin? Any idea?
Yes.
Any idea when the funerals will begin?
When the funerals will begin, that I do not know.
Director, are you able to answer that question? How many unborn children? Yeah.
Just one.
And the 26?
Yes.
So of the 26, one is an unborn child? Yes.
Agent Combs, the Air Force has said it didn't forward the information from the shooter. Has this happened before? Is this a problem from the military, Air Force? Have you had this issue come up from other agencies not providing the critical information you guys need?
Unfortunately, this has happened in the past from a number of agencies. Nothing is perfect. I would refer you to a press release that our headquarters put out from our CGIS division that handles the NICS checks, and it gives you some particular percentages and how the problem is being addressed.
It was said last night that this was bigger than the domestic dispute, that if you had an issue with his mother-in-law, that you wouldn't have come here and killed so many people. Is there any indication that it's tied to his beliefs in atheism, his anti-God rants that were posted online?
Not that I'm aware of.
Do we have a timeline as far as when did you start shooting? I mean, did you start shooting from the outside of the chapel, or did you start when he walked into the chapel? Do you guys have established that yet?
Don't have an exact time. He arrived. He was seen at the Valero. We know he went to the church. He exited. He fired into the front of the church. He moved to the side of the church, continued to fire. Then he entered the church and continued to fire. But as far as the exact time, I think, you know, with the 911 calls, we can tell you the first call that came in, and with our Good Samaritan, of course, you know, he was there. We know when the call came in, within 4 minutes, the Wilson County Sheriff's Office arrived on scene. But as far as the exact time of the first shot, I can't answer.
When was the call? That you had, is that the one that was in the vehicle? Is that the one he used to call his father?
I believe so, yes.
One last question. How many victims still in critical condition?
We have 10 that remain in critical condition.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out this afternoon. We will keep you updated through the DPS Twitter as well as through our email, please.
Thank you.
Authorities in Texas wrapping up a briefing, giving an update on that mass shooting that happened at that small town church on Sunday morning. What we just heard from officials there is that all indications point to this was a semiotic semi-automatic weapon. They went into some further detail. There was 15 magazines the shooter had at the scene. All were empty when found. ATF agents said that they were able to find the shell casings left on the ground. They are now going to use those to see if they were involved, if this weapon was involved in any other shootings. Another headline coming out of that: the phone of the suspected shooter was found. They have it in their possession. They have not been able to get into that phone. They are trying to do so, and they're not sure what the time frame is on that. As far as motivations, officials saying there is no evidence this was politically motivated or religiously motivated. When asked if anything could have stopped him from buying a firearm, the shooter, authorities said there was nothing in that FBI database that would have red flagged a background check. And an update on the mother-in-law of the shooter, he confirmed that she was not in that church. And near the end, you saw that moment where the police were asked about the Good Samaritan who engaged the shooter finally 4 minutes into this active shooting. They called him a hero and said, how can you not love that guy? Congressman Jason Chaffetz is on the couch. You just heard the update, and more details coming out of that horrific morning there in Texas.
It is so sad, and I can't even imagine that whole, these people going to church, a church full of people who are just trying to do the right thing on a brilliant, beautiful morning. But that guy is a hero. I know he says he's not. But I got to tell you, I've said it so many times, but ordinary Americans who step up and do extraordinary things inspire me, and that guy inspires me. I do think the instant background check is an issue. The Sports Shooting Foundation has been trying to fix this since 2013. There's a website. If you go to fixnics.org, fixnics.org, you'll see companies like Vista Outdoors and others trying to highlight the fact that this isn't just an Air Force problem. This is a problem across the United States. People are not properly populating that background check so that somebody like this is, pushed back when they go to the counter and try to buy a gun.
And still no motive yet. They were not able to say what they think inspired the shooter to do this.
Well, and of course, we want to get to the bottom of all of these questions, and particularly looking at things like a database is important because they're only as good as the information that is being inputted into it. But I think as we search for answers, there's not going to be, there are no answers and no motives that are going to answer this unspeakable act. I mean, there's nothing that can explain such an act of evil of walking into a house of worship and killing an 18-month-old, killing a family of 8, murdering a woman who is pregnant, innocent people who are just worshiping and gathering together as a community. And I think we've looked at the state of Texas, which has just been rocked recently, whether it's the assassination of police officers, Hurricane Harvey, this church shooting, and they've continued to demonstrate togetherness and the best of America.
Meanwhile, this investigation is widespread. It is going to take something to get to the bottom of all those questions, Lisa. Jessica, I want to bring you in 136 officers and officials involved in this investigation. They called it massive and complex.
Yeah, I'm sure. Watching it, I was on Sunday night as well. It's very hard to find the words to even describe something like this, especially when you think about the children. There was a 2-year-old hiding below a pew. Yeah. What I would say, though, when you say it's impossible to know what did this, and there are particular cases, obviously, for each. We know that domestic abusers often turn this way. The Pulse nightclub shooter as well beat his wife. But we do know that all of these people are mentally unstable, right? They're all suffering from some form of mental illness. And I'm glad to see that Republicans and Democrats can at least agree about that. I don't know where we go from here, but I hope that there is some path forward for us to deal with this, because your circumstances changes, but the fact that you're insane
it's also stuck with me. 4 minutes it took for first responders to be on the scene there, but they said that is a long time in an active shooter situation. All right, more Outnumbered in just a moment.